Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and I-Man here from the Block Runner MetaZone, Rovi and MScribe, and today we got some more Bitmap Metaverse on Bitcoin updates.
All right, dude. Let's take a look at this killer graphic that I think kind of encapsulates a lot of things in one single image, which that's the beauty and the power of infographic, right?
Yeah.
It's
So we're looking
instead
at
of listening to us, you just simply look at this and it all makes sense, right?
the graphics are the truth, dude.
Oh yeah.
All right,
All right.
small.bitmap says why you should not sell your Bitmap. It says your Bitmap is a key to many locks. It will open up a whole new world for you. Don't sell the key. It says on-chain internet, open metaverse on Bitcoin, block drops. And then, of course, there's more undiscovered because this asset will live for as long as Bitcoin will live. And who knows what other protocols could exist beyond our own lifetime, I-Man. What do you think?
I mean, I think that's a pretty safe assumption, dude. Like it's gonna snowball from here, right? Like we talked about this in our recent like Twitter space, like a DMT space.
Yeah.
That DMT is like an umbrella terminology for like all these interesting things happening on Bitcoin, right? Like leveraging block data for new creative mechanisms, right? That's never been done on chain before, like up until now. Last 15 years been a totally arbitrary like digital asset space, and now we've collectively like understood there's a new vector of value in non-arbitrary uh attempts,
Yeah.
right? So that's what DMT is about, but the non-arbitrary token framework is simply the first showcase of like what you can do when you like wrap this understanding into like an actual deployable mechanism, right?
Yeah.
To achieve something like the digital existence of thing that's rooted to Bitcoin block data.
Yeah, that's correct.
But yeah, what we were saying in that space is like that is not the end of the story, right? Like
Yeah.
not even close.
Yeah, so we've been joining a bunch of Twitter Spaces here lately just to talk about DMT and Bitmap and this whole non-arbitrary space. And yeah, I mean, there's more to Bitmap than what Bitmap is. There's more to DMT than what it is. There's more to develop. This is not the end game by any stretch. And we got people experimenting with things like DAT and DDT and all these other things. And so yeah, that's why we're here, to experiment, to figure out like what is going to stick. And that's the point of this tweet here, is like there's many things that could happen in the future that make this even more valuable. So moving on here. So there's a lot of bullish activity happening with Bitmap. Six in daily volume, listed at 27,000, holders at 35,000. And yeah, top 6 here.
Good to see Bitmap back in the top 10. So there was a pretty long period where, it wasn't quite the lull period, I would say. Bitmap, just because, runes came and, all the attention kind of went in that direction. So, but I think the market is kind of recentering around potentially ordinals, but, there's a lot of things going on in this market, like programmability and such. But we're going to talk about later on how, there's some for sure evidence to suggest that like Bitmap is going to play a critical role in like demonstrating and showcasing why programmability native to layer one is a big deal, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so of course, Satoshi's update here: Atlas operating system launch drop 3, the desktop introducing Atlas. We have the app launcher, basic Windows system. We have the Go menu, which is essentially the taskbar, Inscription multitasking, and initial BAP app list here. So ordinals. So here's the link to see it in live. So you got the taskbar and you have some apps here, which is pretty cool.
So do you know how to describe this like mechanistically from like a mechanistic perspective? How is this being achieved?
Yes.
Like
So basically, this is an inscription. So what you're looking at here is an inscription. So it says ordinals.com content, and then here's the inscription ID. So you know for sure it's an inscription. And you're looking at a desktop. So within this inscription is sort of like a little bit of a framework. It's HTML that points to other BAPs or Bitcoin applications. And those Bitcoin applications, if you double click, is like, for example, a browser, right? In this browser, you can type in a bitmap that is supporting Atlas, and it would bring up the sort of like the HTML page of that bitmap, right? And then you have like this helicopter sort of experience where you kind of fly around in a helicopter, right?
Mm.
Um, so there's other things that that is following the kind of like the scheme here, and then you can kind of explore an entire the Bitmap ecosystem and like this pretty cool kind of interface.
Mm.
And so of course this is all coded in HTML, right? So
Okay.
yeah, so there's just different applications to kind of pull up, look up your bitmap here and stuff like that.
So as people continue to build out these BAPs, are they all collectively going to be like propagating the existence of them on this like shared interface, or is it like
So these are like closed end experiences in the sense that you're not gonna fly together in this like helicopter game, right? So this is not connected to like a multiplayer server. This is a single
Mhm.
player experience, right? You just kind of fly around, and that's about it. And
Okay.
so when I mean by closed end, it's like you remember in the old school days, we'd have our Game Boy, you stick a cartridge in there, and you just kind of play the game that's on the cartridge. Well, that's what we
Mhm.
have here. These are essentially cartridges,
Okay.
but
Okay. So that
they last forever, so that's cool.
yeah, so it's all on chain. So this is like Batoshi's like I guess demonstration of his emphasis around like, on-chain maximalism, right? So there's a vector of that for sure to be supported and to like endeavor through, but you know, we know natively when it comes to developing like metaverse frameworks, like you're saying, multiplayer shared environments that are, have very complex technology stacks around them. Like it absolutely cannot all be on chain. Would you agree?
No, it cannot. I mean, if you want to have like a multiplayer experience, you cannot have a multiplayer server on chain. That is impossible. And so if you want to have like updatable like interactions, like affect the world, you can't do a lot of this stuff on chain, right? And so you can have assets on chain, which is a bitmap, which are DMT assets, which are ordinals, right? You can have those stuff on chain, but you need to leverage a lot of off-chain functionality to have like a high fidelity or a higher fidelity experience.
Yeah. So it's a question of like what your expectations are, like from a metaverse lens, right? So, if you're talking Ready Player One, like it's there are a lot of complexities to achieve that, right? So we're gonna get into it here, like in these future or these upcoming tweets. Like, what are the components of that? How do we actually enable and get us closer to that reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we're fully immersed and we're all participants in a digital economy that's sustainable, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's a lot more complicated than just putting everything on chain, right? That's not how you're going to do it. So let's move it on. So another tweet by small.bitmap here says Bitmap community just added the pre-blockout block tribute. So this is interesting because it took about maybe 3 to 4 weeks before Bitmap blocked out. So it went from 0 inscriptions to all the blocks on Bitcoin, and I think it was up to like 740,000 at the time. And this blocked
Mhm.
out in about a month as of June 30th, 2023. Um,
Mm. So
so
what do you?
go ahead.
Yeah, it's just another classification, right? Like because I guess there's different motivations to why to add this as an
Absolutely.
attribute.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the motivation here is that during the blockout, during that month where we were talking about bitmaps pretty much every day, and we were trying to kind of like get everyone knowledgeable as to why this was important. It was very organic minting, right? These were like human beings going into inscription platforms and typing in a bitmap and hitting and paying for the inscription fee, right? And so these days, after the blockout, there's sort of like this programmed bot taking all the new bitmaps since the blockout, and so that's been happening pretty much since like July of last year. So it's been a whole year of this.
Yeah. I remember those conversations back in those days. There were people like projecting forward into the future. It's like, yeah, you guys might not care about this today, but in the future it's going to become a bigger problem, right?
Yeah.
So here we are, like into the future, like people are starting to identify this as a problem, right?
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It definitely is a problem. There are ways to solve it, but it's going to require some. It's going to require updates to the protocol itself, and so that's not up to us.
Correct.
But moving on, block nines. How well do you know your bitmap? Is who indexes bitmap? And so there was a stretch where Track was indexing and bitmaps, and I think there was a sort of like a splitting between Track and Satoshi to some extent. We don't know the details. Don't To us it doesn't really matter. But the underlying kind of questioning here is like, do you really know who's indexing bitmap? And I don't know. I guess there's a conversation within the community on whether or not indexing is really valuable, which is crazy to me, because that tells me that people who are questioning the value of indexing don't really understand what indexing really is or what it does.
Yeah, like what are the differences as far as like, so there's an on-chain indexing, like again, emphasis like native to bitmap, right? Or just on-chain maximalism period, right? That is the result of kind of what's proliferating as of right now from within the community. It's like, it's an on-chain maximum sentiment, right? And therefore the products that result from that, they suffer from severe limitations. Like let's be 100 about this, right? So what are, as a result of those limitations, like what 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 can we expect as an ecosystem? If we're to kind of like ignore what's happening in the broader Bitcoin space, is like this meta that kind of Benny accepted more than a year ago of like leveraging off-chain indexing and creating like a secure distributed network around that to
Mm-hmm.
support functionality and things like this, right? Like if that's to be completely ignored, like what are the two comparable features in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, if you really ignore indexing, you're ignoring what all of cryptocurrency requires, right? If you go to Ethereum and you go to every single other chain, there's indexing required, right? Indexing is taking the data that's on chain and making it accessible to developers. Without that functionality, you require every single developer to download the entire chain and index it themselves, right? Not a
Hmm.
big deal for you guys that don't understand like what that means, but it's a very big deal for a developer to have to spend time to download, essentially 350 gigabytes of data, parse that data, make sense of that data, and then use that data, right? That for a developer to do that makes no sense. It might be easier just to create an iOS application instead than deal with Web3 programming, right? So what
Hmm.
exists out there are indexers like the Graph, like Track, who do this on behalf of the indexer. It makes it easier for a developer environment to leverage these functionalities to build your application, because you don't
Yeah.
want to download 350 gigabytes and then parse it yourself, right? So there are services out there that do that on your behalf. And so if you
Yeah.
don't utilize this, then you're stuck with like having an entire development stack that you have to support and you have to maintain all by yourself. And then on top of that, you have to find some sort of business model that sustains that activity, because downloading this whole thing and then running that client requires servers that you got to pay for, right? And so
Hmm.
you got a lot of stuff to figure out as a developer if you're not leveraging these services provided by the Graph and Track and these other indexers.
Mhm.
And so what are the consequences of that? It's like much harder to build, less building as a result,
Mhm.
and just like an overall bad experience for even the users, right? So there's that.
Yeah. So it's another one of these things. I guess the ecosystem needs to kind of like, it's an invisible hand decision, right? If you want to be the on-chain maximalist, you've got the product demonstrations that result from that. They're there, right? And then the developers who are leveraging this infrastructure you're describing, block drops is a showcase of exactly that, right?
That's right.
Without its indexing, there would be no way to distribute the DMT native assets the way they're going to be distributed here in the coming weeks. Am
Yeah,
I right?
and recognize them as valid too, right? So there needs to be indexing. Like this is, I mean, indexing. I mean, I know that when you enter, an ecosystem like Bitcoin, everyone has to learn like these new terms and new requirements to kind of make this whole ecosystem work. But indexing is is being done all over the internet. That's what Google does. I mean, this is a fundamental part of data aggregation is indexing.
Hmm.
And so this isn't like some sort of like nefarious actor just trying to take over things. This is a fundamental piece of the technology stack. So it's just a
Correct.
weird thing, and it just tells me that a lot of people who don't understand this are obviously visible with the lack of understanding of how all this works.
Yeah. 100%. It's the reason why we're bringing this up. It needs to be discussed, and like, whatever sentiment is that's building within the Bitmap ecosystem that's against track and tap and all this whole thing that has played a critical role in like the actual progression of this whole non-arbitrary metaverse space. Like it's just it needs to stop. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
It needs to end.
I mean,
And
whether it stops or not, it really doesn't matter. Everyone else is just kind of
well,
move forward and just kind of like ignore this.
yeah, I mean, I
So
guess it doesn't need to. Yeah, it's fine to again choose these routes, but again, the products are going to be very the product distinguishing between them is going to be
yeah,
very,
it's going to be
I guess,
obvious like the quality differences.
yeah,
All right, moving on. So we got Unisat. Oh, by the way, Unisat has a competitor to Bitmap. It's called Uniworlds, and they just raised a seed round.
yeah.
And also, by the way, it's on Fractal Bitcoin, which is getting a lot of attention and traction just because a number that starts at zero has a ton of blue skies and a ton of entertainment potential for people who like entertainment. And so that there's a huge opportunity there for the metaverse on Fractal there.
Yeah, so we made a video like a few months ago about Uniworlds, and um, it's just interesting to see another like metaverse ecosystem emerging from within this like Bitcoin environment. But as we're furthering our understanding of what fractal Bitcoin is, it's actually a sidechain environment to Bitcoin, right? So Bitmap is absolutely native to Bitcoin L1. So these are two completely, like separate ecosystems. But nonetheless, like if you see this next tweet, there are actors out there trying to, I guess, navigate the direction of focus, right? It's like, fractal Bitcoin and the tools being developed by Uniroles, stuff now that are properly funded, connected to Binance, yada, 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 right? Like, we're anticipating a much more rich environment and experience as a result of like the development happening over there, right?
For
Because
sure. Yeah. And there's a lot of supporting evidence to suggest that, this guy's right. So, blockchain racing here says here, today's the day. I've finally decided to exit the Bitmap ecosystem. I'll be flooring all my Bitmaps today. The logic is I fully expect Uniworld Studio Editor to arrive next week. I believe it will lead to a massive map capitulation as users shift over. Users want to run around in the metaverse. They want loot. They want to use their community coin in that metaverse. Uniworlds facilitates that. Bitmap is now just a browser. So, I mean, there's a lot of experiences, a lot of metaverse experience in Web3 that we've been a part of. We have a lot of history with that. We've been spending the last 5 years talking about essentially the metaverse, and Bitmap represents something new, something that's not an arbitrary, something that hasn't been tried before. And so Uniworlds doesn't incorporate any of those elements, and it's on its own blockchain. So it's like saying, here's a new metaverse on this new blockchain. It's got a seed round, and I'm extremely bullish on that. That's essentially what this tweet is saying.
yeah, and if you know the character himself, shout out to Block. He's a fractal, I guess, enthusiast, right? As a lot of the space seems to be, joining in that club in that camp, which is perfectly fine. It's viable. It's a
Yeah.
total viable developer option, right? So you can expect good things to come from it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's also Unisat is supporting this whole thing. So Unisat, Binance, the Asian community, like those are all like bullish signals, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Uh,
but ultimately the meat of this like conversation is centered around technology primitives, infrastructure that's actually going to get us to the point that he's describing here, right? His bull case for Uniworlds is
mm,
like it's actually on its way to delivering this Ready Player One reality, right? At least getting into that direction, right? So
yeah, totally agree.
Bitmap needs to also be aligned, and we need to be really heading into that direction. from a technology framework and like what are the primitives we're developing to actually enable that, right? So
Yeah, I totally
if you
agree.
study, yeah, Uniroles, they've got these AI tools in the works, AI content proliferation tools. Um,
Yeah, just technologies to support the development of a 3D environment where we all interact and affect the environment together. Yeah,
right. So
and
speak.
speaking of, like you're saying, so do we, right? So Superfan here, it says, living in the future. Last week, our Gen AI 3D meshes looked a little funky, but now they're starting to form. And this is just an early build of this AI technology stack that Superfan is showcasing here, where you can generate an AI image and take that image and generate a 3D model. And so why this is important is because right now 3D modeling is very expensive, right? You need a human to go and hand model these 3D objects if you want like a unique kind of like environment, right? You can just like go to like one of these 3D model marketplaces, spend like $2 or $3, and then you have like a GOB that you can kind of copy and deploy in your environment. But we've seen those metaverses; they're not interesting, and there's no sticky experiences when you do that, right? And so now with this AI, for a few cents, you can custom develop and design 3D models that are spit out in a few seconds. And so these are the AI tools that are we think are a primitive for constructing the metaverse in a very economical way. And so that is coming to L1 Bitcoin, by the way. And as a matter of fact, Superfan is having his first mint as a UNAT happening on August 15th in a few days, showcasing this AI technology. Not in 3D yet, but it's kind of like a different take on AI and adventures. So it's going to be
Yeah,
interesting how we're leveraging this AI.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, the Heroes collection is going to be a tremendous demonstration of, the combining of DMT and artificial intelligence to generate, a whole new classification of valuable output, right? And it's an asset that's going to exist that in your possession if you choose to mint one of these that functions unlike anything else that you have within your whole wallet collection, right? And that's what excites us about it, is because it's something new, genuinely something new. It's leveraging on-chain data to its maximum ability, leveraging like the forefront frontier of artificial intelligence, and like we were just talking about, it's got direct implications for metaverse construction, right? So I'm pretty sure this is going to be a ubiquitously utilized tool in the future. We're working directly with Superfan to ensure that happens, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Because like
imagine
already, yeah, go ahead.
imagine leveraging this AI tool and we block drop a 3D environment to all Bitmap holders, right? And
I,
to deploy this block drop is it's a few dollars, and then for people to actually mint this, it's a few dollars to mint this and deploy to your Bitmap, right? And this is across all 850,000 Bitmaps. That is efficiency, right? So these are important tools that we gotta develop and deploy, and it takes a lot of work to do this. This isn't something that you kind of just like code up on a weekend, right? There's a lot of work behind the scenes here.
correct.
All right,
So
so
speaking of complexities and high degrees of functionality, so we're not the only ones developing anything in this bitmap space. Obviously, it's a community of contributors, but
yeah,
Jeff had Jeff, the initiator of the BRC 420 protocol, and now Merlin, he's resurfacing with some new contributions, or at least like evidence that he's expanding the capabilities native to his metaverse stack, right?
yeah, and so this tweet is saying they successfully passed a smart contract security audit by this company called Biosin.
Mhm.
And Bitmap.game is a metaverse on Bitcoin where users can utilize their Bitmap for social gaming and trading. So you're right, yeah. So they're moving forward and they're supporting Bitmap sort of like on their layer 2 metaverse kind of technology stack on Merlin chain. So a lot of functionality is likely to be happening there. We're talking about smart contracts, right? So all of a sudden, smart contracts and programmability is all the rage on Bitcoin, which is the thing that we've
Yeah.
been talking about for, I don't know, since the drop of ordinals. That functionality is key, not memes, right? So, yeah. So there's a tweet here by CoinDesk. Says Bitcoin gets native smart contracts via TAP protocol. So finally, some acknowledgement, some recognition. TAP has, or Benny's been talking about programmability on Bitcoin for a while now, and we knew that this was the way, right? Because that's how you bring developers. That's how you bring new functionality on top of the chain. And so it's finally happening, and this time on layer one.
Yeah, so this is good news for anybody who's developing for Bitmap under the TAP umbrella, right? That includes us, that includes Foxy, at some point could include Natomon, that includes Superfan, it includes a lot of different developers, right, who want to contribute their value as talented developers to the Bitmap ecosystem. Now we've got this new suite of tools to
That's right.
finally deliver on like the complexity requirement to achieve an actual digital economy, right? So I don't know how many times we have to emphasize like that is actually the goal. I guess because it's not obvious that like the metaverse is really supposed to be like this economic opportunity, a new frontier of economic opportunity,
Yeah.
right? So to achieve that, it requires so many different like primitives, and again, they can't all be like 100% on chain, right? We leverage the on-chain security components to the most efficient way we can to achieve that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah, and the most important thing is layer one Bitcoin programmability. That's like the holy grail. So,
yeah.
speaking of holy grail, we're talking about programmability. We're talking about a high fidelity experience, and
Mm-hmm.
what we're bringing to the table is nothing less than that, right? And so what you're seeing here, iMan, is you jumping around as your unique avatar, Natcat, with
That's me back there, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, that's
laser
definitely me.
beams.
Yeah, I just happen to be the only one in the bunch who's got the laser eyes. But
Yeah,
man, yeah, I couldn't. I've been waiting for not very long to see this actually like exist, right? Outer Studios, I think about a week ago, like brought in the first Natcat, leveraging this avatar creation model,
yeah,
right? That enables things like unique 3D assets to proliferate in our bitmap environment, right? So
that's right.
this is it's working. In other words, like there's no cap to this, right? As far as how
No,
what can be supported.
no.
Yeah.
Every single PFP project can be realized in 3D using the scripting functionality and kind of like stringing these unique traits all together in 3D format and representing your avatar. So we believe the metaverse is going to be a bunch of primitives, and one of the primitives is not only just the land ownership, but unique identities. And we need those unique identities to be all on chain and to people to represent themselves, right, in the metaverse. And so that's what we've been focusing on. There's going to be a lot more coming here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be focusing on bitmaps, parcels, and kind of like experiences that are deployable on top of your bitmap. First one is going to be Foxy with their Bitminer coming up soon. So there's a lot of stuff happening, and there's a lot of cool stuff, and it's all like layer one stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is our time, I guess, because there is a lot of noise in the space right now, like a new sector of noise, right? Now it's like everybody's being pulled into this programmability race, like which is absolutely fine, right? That this is a core concern for anybody who's building on Bitcoin, right? So, but nonetheless, like us metaverse developers, we've got multiple frameworks now to work with. Bitmaps has been around for more than a year. It's we've got an impending wave of like a new market cycle, right? Bitcoin will be in the six-figure territory at some point
Yeah,
early next year, most likely, right?
yeah,
So as we understand how the markets work, these new entrants, as a result of that, they're going to be looking and exploring like what are the new interesting things happening in the ecosystem, right? So, we can't sit around and wait for years for things to, actually pan out. Like we've got to put our best like demonstrations forward, right? There's real substance being generated here.
Yeah, I totally
And
agree. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
having all this on layer one Bitcoin, like I don't know why you'd want to do anything else anywhere else. And so we're happy to kind of like contribute to the Bitmap ecosystem and contribute to the whole DMT space. And there's some big things happening here in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned. I appreciate everybody for watching. If we miss anything as far as Bitmap, let us know in the comment section below. And join our Discord for the latest stuff that's going to be happening. And I appreciate you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.
peace.